the United States, the paradise of global capital, embraces the freest market, the greatest companies, the most vibrant capitals, and the most innovative entrepreneurs worldwide. Ventures yearning for financing and growing scramble to gain a foothold here in this paradise. Liberal democracy, business boom, and constant innovation complement each other. That's what each and every American is proud of. But when we zoom in on each and every American's daily life, things get not as sound as we may have thought. It happens when a wheel or the three-way catalytic converter was taken off from your new car overnight, or your private information was publicly spread. Or your son's pocket money ended up protection racket in others' pocket. These seem not fit in the principle of liberal democracy we take pride in. The gift of justice somehow only bestows upon the rich and the power holder. Just 355 companies out of Fortune Global 500 made $1 billion plus net profit in 2023. In other words, still 145 companies couldn't reach the $1 billion threshold. Yet one unique organization earns billions or even tens of billions every year. Were it a company, it could easily rank in top 100. Who is it? It is our Department of Justice. Since 2000, DOJ has charged billions, if not tens of billions, of dollars in fines and settlement fees per year. One of the most frequently used penalty bases is the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, FCPA. FCPA of 1977 was enacted for the purpose of prohibiting any corrupt interstate commerce of U.S. entities. Before 2001, subjects investigated had been second- or third-tier industries. Big players like Boeing or GM went unfettered. However, the FCPA was amended in 1988 when then-Senator Alphonse D'Amato introduced the International Anti-Bribery and Fair Competition Act, aka D'Amato's Act, which extended the scope of FCPA to cover bribery of foreign entities. As long as the entity involved is billed in US dollars, employs or has employed a US financial service organization, or uses servers in the US to send, receive, and store mails, it'll be subject to the Act. DOJ's jurisdiction over foreign entities has henceforth been justified. Any agent that uses an email address provided by firms like Microsoft or Google to store or send contracts, or that is serviced by an internet service provider registered in other countries but with servers located in the US, can be DOJ's target. If it was true that the foreign entities were outcompeting their US competitors by bribery, then DOJ would have nothing to blame, but the truth seems the other way round. My colleagues found that US business giants are in fact collaborating with DOJ, who shields the former even through entrapment in certain projects. Firstly, DOJ used consultant firms to induce risky conduct from foreign entities that could lead to the violation of the FCPA. It then persuaded or forced them to plead guilty and pay a large amount to settle, and, under the settlement agreement, assigned an independent monitor to supervise their future business practices. Thus, DOJ managed to take hold of the foreign companies involved and turn them into puppets of US business giants. Let's share a couple of cases. First, the Alstom case. This is a well-known case. As depicted in Frederick Pierucci's book, The American Trap, My Battle to Expose America's Secret Economic War Against the Rest of the World. On April 14, 2013, Pierucci, the executive of the French company Alstom, was arrested by the FBI at JFK Airport. He was accused of bribing Indonesian officials in a local electricity company in exchange for a $118 million contract, known as the Tarahan Project, between 2002 and 2009, when the U.S. conglomerate General Electric, GE, attempted to take over the energy division, a real money spinner, from Alstom, who refused to do so. At the time, Alstom was a highly valued company whose strategic position for France was unrivaled. About 75% of France's electricity is generated by this company. In other words, for every 4 kilowatts of electricity produced in France, 3 of them are from Alstom generators, and even the propulsion turbines on the aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle were supplied by Alstom. When expanding business in a new country, transnational companies often look for a suitable and reliable middleman to influence government officials who have a say, thus making it easier to secure a contract. Once the project was landed, the middleman and local officials would get a substantial sum of commission. Such a scheme is a common practice in some European countries and most African and Middle Eastern countries, and is relatively mature in Alstom, within which a strict intermediary screening system and a tiered approval procedure supporting this scheme have developed. Pierucci's engagement in Terahon project is fully in line with the company's rules. And the reason why DOJ could grasp all the key details of Alstom's transaction attributes to an American financial employee in Alstom's U.S. branch who was a paid informant for the FBI and copied online records of money transfer between Alstom and relevant Indonesian accounts. DOJ was well aware that to arrest Michael Carroll, Alstom's CEO, could stir up resistance in France or even throughout the EU. So Pierucci's capture was actually to send a threatening signal to Alstom's executives. That turned out to be the last straw pushing Alstom to accept GE's bid for its energy division. Alstom's dismemberment was also ascribed to the inaction of the French government, who boasts the reputation for political, economic, and diplomatic independence from the US, when such a strategic company was targeted by DOJ. In December 2014, DOJ announced to impose Alstom $772 million fine. The payment should be due in no later than 10 days after the plea deal was signed, like the case of ZTE, whose $1 billion out of $1.4 billion fine was directly transferred from its U.S. account, but to our surprise, DOJ gave Alstom a grace period of 6 months. Insiders told us that such a move was for GE's acquisition when at that juncture, overpressurization would easily provoke resistance in France. Second, the Patrick Ho Chi Ping case. Patrick Ho Chi Ping, Hong Kong's former Secretary for Home Affairs, was arrested at JFK Airport upon his arrival from Hong Kong to New York in November 2017. On December 5, 2018, the state federal jury in New York convicted Ho for his violating the FCPA and money laundering after finding that he had benefited CFC China Energy by bribing African officials. U.S. prosecutors charged that Ho used the former Senegalese foreign minister, who had obtained U.S. permanent residence permit at the time, as an intermediary to pay a bribe of $2 million to the president of Chad for seeking the right of oil exploration for CFC China Energy. Moreover, he wired a bribe of $500,000 from Hong Kong through an agent bank in New York to a Ugandan account designated by the Ugandan foreign minister, under the guise of a charitable fund, with the purpose of gaining Ugandan orders and projects for CFC China Energy. DOJ asserted jurisdiction over Ho, neither a U.S. citizen nor a U.S. green card holder at the time of his indictment, based on the fact that Ho was serving as the Secretary General of a Virginia-based NGO. And that some of the criminal conducts, the bank telegraphic transfer, took place within the U.S., which applied to territorial jurisdiction. In the Alstom case, DOJ asserted jurisdiction over the French executive's briberies in Indonesia on the grounds that Pierucci paid bribes by US dollars and used the email system with a server in the U.S. In other words, DOJ has now unilaterally determined that the concept of territoriality for territorial jurisdiction encompasses both cyberspace and financial field. Third, the BNP Paribas case. On June 30, 2014, DOJ announced that BNP Paribas violated the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, and the Trading with the Enemy Act, TWEA, when it processed billions of dollars in transactions with Sudanese, Iranian, and Cuban entities between 2004 and 2012. BNP Paribas agreed to plead guilty and promised to pay financial penalties with a total of $8,973.6 million, including forfeiture of $8,833.6 million and fine of $140 million. In addition, 13 executives, including the group's chief operating officer, will be forced to resign. And its New York branch and other affiliates will be banned from trading in US dollars within 1 year. Insiders have told us that BNP Paribas behaviors were entirely common practices among international banks, which is fully compliant with French law. For example, the plea agreement mentioned that BNP Paribas made an anonymous U-turn payments to Iran. However, If executing the compliant U-turn transactions, it will typically trigger alerts of U.S. financial institutions that can subject the flagged transactions to be further scrutinized, cost longer time than the expected or desired time of banks' customers, so it is common for commercial banks to take steps to circumvent regulation by hiding their trading accounts. It wasn't even until November 6, 2008 that the Treasury Department announced that it would amend the Iranian transactions regulations to revoke the authorization for U-turn transfers, which means the Treasury Department has always considered U-turn payments to be compliant. However, DOJ has seized on BNP Paribas' U-turn transaction and issued a hefty fine. What's the purpose of DOJ? It sticks out a mile. Interestingly, on July 1, Putin told Russian diplomatic officials, "We know our U.S. partners are pressuring France to relinquish the construction of assault ships. We even know that they have hinted that if France refuses to fulfill the contract, the sanctions against the bank will come to nothing." Russia has been sanctioned by many countries over Crimea, and one of the sanctions is to suspend the cooperation with France on the sale of the Northwesterly-class amphibious assault ships. Insiders told us that the fine against BNP Paribas was actually issued in 2009 with the initial penalty of $3 billion. Back then, BNP Paribas dealt with DOJ for many times but achieved nothing. In order to minimize the penalties on BNP Paribas, the French government also spares no effort. The head of the Bank of France, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and even the Prime Minister and the President of France have stepped forward to plead for mercy, hoping the White House not to set excessively heavy punishment. However, 5 years later, DOJ did not reduce the fine. What's more, it tripled the fine after the unsuccessful efforts to persuade France not to fulfill the contract. Obviously, the US actually intended to blackmail a self-interested, political statement, through the BNP Paribas case. Fourth, the Societe Generale case, as Libya emerged from international economic sanctions from 2005 to 2011. A number of Libyan national economic entities, including the Libyan Investment Authority, the Libyan Sovereign Wealth Fund, state-owned financial companies, etc., attempted to deposit large amounts of money into global financial institutions for investment purposes. In this context, a US-based investment management firm that provided advice and financial services to the Libyan Investment Authority recommended the Libyan Investment Authority to make large-scale financial investments to global financial institutions, including the Societe Generale and at least 8 US banks. Indeed, until at least the year 2006. Several Societe Generale employees clearly knew that the investment management firm was paying bribes to Libyan government officials to secure Societe Generale's investments, but Societe Generale continued to work with the investment management firm. During this period, Societe Generale, through its subsidiaries and this investment management firm, paid approximately $90.74 million to intermediaries and government officials to sell 14 structured notes with a total value of approximately $3.66 billion to Libyan financial institutions and profited by approximately $523 million. On June 4, 2018, DOJ announced that it had signed a 3-year deferred prosecution agreement with Societe Generale, in which Societe Generale agreed to pay a criminal fine of $860 million as well as report the company's compliance situation to DOJ within 3 years. DOJ laid out 2 indictments against Societe Generale alleging that the bank conspired to violate the anti-bribery stipulations of the FCPA and conspired to disseminate false, misleading, and knowingly inaccurate reports on commodities. By contrast, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, announced in 2011 to investigate Goldman Sachs' conduct in Libya to determine whether the firm engaged in illegal foreign bribery in violation of the FCPA. The similar incident also happens after Libya emerged from international economic sanctions, where the Libyan Sovereign Wealth Fund controlled by Libyan leader Gaddafi gave $1.3 billion to Goldman Sachs for options, covering a basket of currencies as well as 6 stocks. But when Lehman Brothers collapsed and credit markets froze in 2008, Libya's investment with Goldman Sachs was almost lost, and the value of the related securities plummeted to an eventual loss with a maximum of 98%. Goldman Sachs' failed financial management made the Libyan side doubly angry. Therefore, the Libyan Investment Authority sued Goldman Sachs in the High Court in London in early 2014, alleging that Goldman Sachs' misguided investments and improper operations caused its loss of billions of dollars. The Libyan Investment Authority identified Goldman Sachs' internal sales director in charge of the Libyan transaction Yosef as mainly responsible for networking, for obtaining the investment authority's large orders. Although the evidence is so solid, and the investigation of the Societe Generale has long been finalized over 10 years, the relevant investigation of Goldman Sachs Group is still unsettled. Did the U.S. investment management company which take the initiative to play a key role in this incident? Everyone is well informed. It is clear that DOJ only protects the consortium giants and some emerging enterprises that are willing to invest in government lobbying. Fairness and justice are only limited to the upper class with established interests in our country. By contrast, fairness and justice for the rest of the people can only be purchased by earning more money, or by placing their faith on God or a psychiatrist, praying and confiding to them to soothe the indignation deep inside.